Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar, and it's kind of a double upload style of a day today. I actually did want to yap about this. Ladies and gentlemen, EA Games, Electronic Abomination. I was reading literally today that they got bought out. They went private. There's apparently a $55 billion deal where apparently the Saudi Arabians have bought them. So I want to just kind of talk about this a little bit because I've seen so much yelling and in constant information that I wanted to kind of hit you a little bit with like a wall of facts, okay? Now, I'm more talking about this because I love video games. I really do. Right now, I'm actually playing through Infinite Wealth, like the Yakuza game. I'm just trying to platinum it right now. One of my favorite franchises, I will say. Out of nowhere, really, but that's a different story. I play a lot of indie games, especially games like Factorio, especially games that I can find on Steam that are like $10, but they give me like 1,000 hours of playtime. What I'm not a big fan of, and this is just something that I think a lot of gamers kind of feel, is I don't really buy a lot of big AAA titles necessarily. So for me, AAA gaming is one of those things where I just have conveniently, like, if I don't buy a AAA game anymore until like GTA 6, it's not going to necessarily bother me, okay? Because a lot of AAA stuff is usually shit that companies will sell you for like $70, $80, $60, whatever the fucking price tag is. And usually it's not as good as the indie stuff. It's just the same bullshit that I guess we've all become accustomed to. It's all games that are made to be hyper monetized and whatnot. So EA Games for me, like the moment they stopped producing a lot of single player stuff, the last EA game that I bought that I really enjoyed was, I'm not joking with you, the Dead Space remake. And that was a remake of a game that came out a long time ago. So again, there's a lot of people that are excited for things like Battlefield 6, and I'm glad if you are. Bro, I'm just too old at this point to really play shooters where everyone in the world is snapping to my head. I'd rather just cozy up and play a fucking single player game and talk about Linux, okay? That is what it is. So anyways, to give you an idea, EA Games has effectively announced a $55 billion buyout. And there's three big buyers, okay? There's Silver Lake, who are apparently, involved with buying out TikTok and shit. You've got a company known as Affinity Partners, which belongs to Jared Kushner. Yeah, that guy. And then, of course, you've got the Saudi Arabian, investment fund, which, it's a $1 trillion fund for Saudi Arabia where they've just basically been buying up everything. So immediately this was announced, and I guess they're buying it at like $210 a share. So if you had money to throw into the stock before, this deal came out or as it was coming out, smart move to make, okay? Provided you could actually cash in on that cream. But this isn't me talking about investing your money, all right? This is me talking about fucking EA getting bought out. So immediately right here, I started looking at a bunch of stuff where like former people from BioWare were talking about how all of this is going to be guns and football, and they're going to get rid of like the gay stuff down the road too, which ultimately I don't really think that, Saudi Arabia or whatever are really going to go in and push their, brand of politics necessarily. At the end of the day, business is business, okay? And if you can find a way to profit off of something, you can always bend your will and malleable ideas to that, okay? It is what it is. And you really have to see things going forward. But the thing that was important about this is I wanted to see how this actual buyout was done. So apparently for $55 billion, according to some actual financial guys, this was a leveraged buyout, okay? So apparently this buyout includes $20 billion worth of debt, and that basically means that the people buying this out, right, the people who are purchasing EA, are effectively relying on the company's assets. They need this fucking company to be as profitable as they can actually make it, just because they're putting in so much money to buy it. The actual real winners in this are not the fucking gamers, and I'll tell you why in a bit. They're not the guys who are buying it, because now they have to make this project work. It's actually the guys at the top of EA, all right? The people that have already fucked this company beyond belief, at least in the eyes of gamers. They made it one of the most evil gaming companies in the world. Yeah, those are the ones that are walking away with this with a fucking pretty penny. So immediately when I was looking at this deal and I saw how it was bought out, it immediately reminded me that, look, at the end, a lot of those big developers at EA are going to start getting layoffs. And you kind of started to see this even with Activision and Microsoft. Like, bro, just because a super big company buys you doesn't necessarily mean that everyone gets to enjoy a little bit of relaxation. Immediately, when these purchases fucking happen, what they want is the company to be incredibly profitable. And how that happens is they immediately start trimming the costs. So, just if you're like a developer who's working at any of the studios that aren't producing these sports games at EA, that aren't working on things like Battlefield, I do expect that there's going to be layoffs, especially related to this down the road. Now, the only EA game that I was even remotely somewhat like keeping an attention on was Mass Effect 4 or Mass Effect 5, whatever they're going to title it, because they had Mass Effect Andromeda. And I understand, Mood, it's BioWare, and BioWare hasn't exactly had the most sterling reputation. But that was about the only game that I was into. It's a single-player Mass Effect game that, I've been somebody that has been with Mass Effect since the beginning. Even if it turned out to be dog shit, I would still be interested to see the game come out. Now, I'm almost even suspecting that that game probably won't even see the light of day. Simply because I haven't heard much about it since the actual, reveal for Mass Effect 4 or 5 or whatever the title is. But now, given the fact that this is a leveraged buyout and the fact that BioWare is already kind of on the outs, or, at least it's been the most scrutinized, I don't expect them to be receiving the same sort of love as the sports division or Battlefield. And again, this is just speculation on my end. There was apparently a rumor that came out that apparently the new owners of EA, were looking at breaking big with AI as the future. And we all know what that means, okay? Basically, they want to apparently, and this is just a rumor, look at using artificial intelligence to quote-unquote boost profits in the coming years. So yeah, if you're a developer for this company or anybody in general, and you're drawing a salary, the bean counters who are now trying to make this leveraged buyout work are going to be looking at your salary, your involvement in the company, and seeing how that compares to an enterprise AI package. Spoiler alert, the AI is going to be a lot fucking cheaper down the road. And the thing with AI is it's just, at least generatively, it's all around us, okay? You've already got apparently talent agencies trying to hype up AI influencers, AI celebrities. You've already got just AI shit permeating all over, social media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, or whatever. We live in a day and age where we've probably got 6 times the amount of media that is being created every single day. No joke. But it's also that 6 times of that content, that content itself, most of it appears to just be AI generated shit anyway. It's getting genuinely difficult sometimes to find the real human being in amongst the slew of AI generated shit that's getting thrown in our ways. And I don't think that's going to change for even things like gaming. If EA already was a company that had you fucking cringing to begin with, I don't doubt going forward, especially to turn a profit, a lot of the stuff might just start involving generative AI. I wouldn't even doubt that as Battlefield 6 drops, and if that game really does do well, which it seems like it will because gamers are kind of excited for it, I wouldn't even doubt that modern EA would just suddenly decide to constantly fill it with a slew of AI-generated, gun skins that they can sell down the road just to make full cream profit and cut out even the artists or or just the developers from that entire exchange anyways. I wouldn't even doubt in the future if a lot of those shitty made sports games that are already Control-C and Control-V into the next year project are not going to be vibe coded even a little bit or a lot going into the future. Yeah, the EA acquisition is just one of those things where it's not a big deal for me because look, I love playing video games, but honestly, every single year, at least for the last two years, I would say, I've been in a situation where my care for the AAA industry is at such an all-time low that it's not even funny. I don't think that there's a lot of game companies. I've already given up faith on companies like Ubisoft for the most part. I've given up hopes on anything Activision related. It's to the point where every year I would somewhat even be excited about a Call of Duty campaign. But I can't even be fucked to look at the minute-long trailers for that new Black Ops 7 just because all of the wind has been taken out of the sails. And if you think I give a shit about EA stuff, bro, they're not even keeping franchises that I have somewhat of an excitement on. Games like Need for Speed are already an afterthought. Games like Mass Effect, games like Dead Space 2, which in all honesty should have probably gotten a remake, have not. So under the current EA banner, Things are already dog shit. I think current EA sucks. And this acquisition, if anything, probably has a chance to make things even better. But then when you look closely at how it was purchased, you start to just completely realize that the people behind this purchase and how they've purchased it, they're going to try to make this the most like profitable purchase for them. Okay, they're going to try to cut costs everywhere they can, meddle in a little bit of AI, and they're only going to be looking at the actual like IPs that EA has that they know they can do something with monetization wise. Okay, so games in the sports genre, obviously they can crank that shit full of advertising, crank that shit full of money-making ventures, because we all know how insane sports games get. And if you're wondering, Muda, it's Saudi Arabia. Don't they hate gambling and shit in video games? Yeah, I'm sure they hate gambling in their country. But if they can find a way to use other countries' laws to make billions of dollars for themselves through their investment, bro, that's always gonna win, okay? Just think of life like that. Stop thinking of it in the sense of culture battles. Look at it from business perspectives. They're not going to kill cash cows, especially after they've put so much money into these projects. And Saudi Arabia is also not the sole investor. I hate the way that it's being sort of like told in the public. This is a joint purchase, and this is a joint purchase on the basis of making money. Really, the big losers in this, I would say, are actually just the gamers who have more of an interest from EA when it comes to the IPs that aren't anything to do with, you know, your Battlefields or your sports games or really anything that can have battle passes and everything thrown right in. This is going to be a thing where most of the stuff that comes out from EA is going to be IPs that they can live service, hyper monetize. So if you're ever thinking that maybe there was a chance that a Dead Space 2 remake could come out or another genuinely amazing single player title, I'm not really seeing it. And that's why if I had any fucks left about EA, after this purchase, they're already dashed. It's the same feeling that I had when Activision was bought out. It's really the same feeling I had when Embracer Group, to an extent, bought out some of my favorite franchises. I literally talked about Deus Ex a few days ago, and how Embracer Group's project, or their remake of that, was probably the most low-effort dog shit that I've ever seen thrown out. And again, it shows me that no matter how much money you give these companies, like if they're part of these big investment portfolios, you tend to see less of the games and you start to see more of the shitty practices that led to these companies being so vilified in the first place. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to give you a view on this, on part of the culture war or anything of that nature. I'm just here to give you a grim reality. If you're thinking in the future you're going to get some bangers from EA, I really hope you do. But the writing on the wall for me says that probably should just fucking stick to indies, boys. Probably should fucking stick far away. The EA games that I grew up as a kid with, you know, the fucking EA games, challenge everything. That shit died the moment I turned into a fucking teenager, the moment I was in my fucking senior year. And if you think that EA is still here now that I'm fucking in my 30s, god damn, you have got to be insane out of your mind. But yeah, I wanted to yap about it because EA Games, man. Once a titan of the industry, now just another notch in the portfolios of billionaires around the world who, in my honest opinion, probably don't even give a shit about gaming, obviously in the same manner you and I give a shit about gaming, okay? Unless the manner of gaming you care about is how the fuck can we monetize it and make our share price go through the roof. Ladies and gentlemen, I am out.